Once the map is made, we move on to the next stage of the AF ablation. This is obviously the ablation process itself. First of all, we make sure that the contact force is zeroed, and again, this is simply an unravelling of the catheter as I normally have it pulled against the septum whilst making the map. Again, as I do this in a standardised fashion every way, the CARTO operator knows that that's what I'm going to have to do without even needing to tell them. Straight away, I then move to the right inferior pulmonary vein, and at this point I'm able to judge what the impedance in the chamber is going to be, and I make sure that the scale on my impedance graph is adequate so that I can see an impedance fall during ablation. Again, here you can see the voltage map, which in this patient with paroxysmal atrial fibrillation, structurally normal heart on MRI, again shows a normal voltage. Taking time to make the map is important because it makes it easier for the CARTO operator to do less adjustment so that you can concentrate on going round and doing the ablation. One of the things that I try and impress upon the fellows that I'm teaching is to have the least amount of time not ablating. You need to be trying to move and work almost throughout the entire procedure without any downtime. I say that the catheter lab is a bad place to do your thinking. And by this, I mean you shouldn't be planning on how to do the procedure. That should already have been done beforehand. So you can see as soon as I made the map, I zeroed the catheter and went straight to the vein. Please take time to notice the impedance drop, as well as using the ablation index information, which is key, and I'm aiming for an ablation index of 400. I'm also looking at the impedance drop. If I'm not getting an impedance drop, I would tend to either reinforce that with more tightly spaced lesions, try and increase the force, or increase the power.
You can probably collect a little bit of anatomy as well.
Also, as I go around, I try and have a mental map of where I felt I was getting very good impedance drops with an immediate impedance drop, like here, to areas where that change of impedance was less impressive. If a vein is not isolated, as well as looking for gaps between lesions, I will try and remember where the lesions were not as impressive in terms of the impedance drop. As you can see, there's very little time between when I am not ablating and I move to the next lesion. As I'm approaching 400, I start to move the catheter to the next position that I want to ablate to. Again, this minimizes the time between being on and off. People often refer to themselves either as point by point or by dragging the catheter. I think this dichotomy is perhaps a little wrong. Here, I am moving point by point, but I move rapidly between the point that I've just done and the point that I'm going to go to. Whether you call this dragging or point by point, I think is a moot point. Clearly it is point by point. I'm able to get all the information that I need with ablation index and also the contiguity whilst moving rapidly and efficiently. If at any point I find it difficult to continue, perhaps due to the anatomy of the patient, the shape of the catheter not being ideal, I will rapidly move to come up the posterior wall, for example, in this case. But again, try to be continuous movement with tightly spaced lesions. And normally you're able to find that coming from a different trajectory, you are able to continue with minimal problems going round and creating the circle. One of the most impressive things about using ablation index, and if you are going to use the closer protocol that I ever heard, was when Matthias Ditchhaver said that looking at all the cases for the multi-center study, the VisitAct study, you couldn't tell who had done which procedure and that all the circles appeared the same. So here we've isolated the right veins on the first pass. We're able to check this with the multiple mapping catheter.
What a bing bang move.
And you can see, whilst I'm doing that, I've already started to move across to where I'm going to start my left encirclement. So again, as little time as possible is used between the last ablation on the right encirclement and the first ablation on the left encirclement. Again, with this first lesion, you can see that I'm getting adequate contact
Cheeky chops.
and a nice impedance drop as I start ablating. We now start the process again, going around the left veins. Again, I would encourage people to collect data on each stage, find out how long it takes for you to isolate vein pairs. This way, in order to call for the next patient so that they're ready, you already know that at this stage, I'm probably about 15 minutes away from finishing the AF ablation. This allows the anaesthetist to prepare themselves.
Oh yeah, we are. 36 minutes.
Gives time for the ward to get ready and prepare the patient.
Needle to 1 pair done.
And we've also obviously made sure that all the equipment is ready for the next case. That is what standardization brings to the procedure. In the closer protocol, an ablation index of 550 is targeted. We tend to use 400 to 450, going around the anterior surface of the left veins. But again, one of the main things that I'm looking at is the impedance drop. If I'm getting a good impedance drop that then starts to plateau, I feel that I've made a transmural lesion. If I'm not getting a good impedance drop, I will alter what I am doing to either increase the power or trying to increase the contact force or to increase the duration of time that I'm on and obviously therefore the ablation index. But I much prefer seeing a good impedance drop to just purely increasing time so that I know I am creating a lesion. So at this point we then isolated the left veins, which I went and checked. This procedure took less than an hour to do. The patient was recovered quickly and was able to go back to the recovery unit, and we're able to start the next case within 15 minutes. By having a standardized process, it allows us to move efficiently through the list of patients.
Probably call from watch patient. All right.